Welcome, everyone. My name is Payal Gaglani Bhatt, and it is my absolute privilege to be able to facilitate this particular session, which is a short masterclass on Agile performance management and Agile rewards management. So, the reason we do these masterclasses is because those of us that are working in the field of people practice, in the field of HR, often we are so stuck in our day-to-day ways of working that we don't get the moments to step back, to reflect, to look at what we are doing and figure out, are we doing the right thing? Is it working? Or is it something that we need to change and evolve and make it more effective? Now, in the field of performance management, every single organization does something. There are some older techniques, there are some newer techniques, but pretty much every organization either has a formal or an informal way in which they do performance management. One of the things we want to talk about is this working? Because there are some aspects of performance management which were relevant but no longer work. In other cases, you've got some aspects of rewards which once upon a time used to work, but now no longer seem as effective as they could. So the whole idea behind today's masterclass is to show you what is agile performance management and how does that look like, and again within rewards, where does this fit in? So that's what we're going to look at over the next 70 minutes or so. And then the last 20 minutes are open for you guys to have some questions and ask anything that you want to explore further or perhaps share in terms of your own experiences with this. I have enabled all of your microphones. So at any point in time, if you have a question or if you have a comment, please use the chat, please use the unmute option, and you can absolutely pitch in with your ideas and suggestions. For those of you that have just joined in, so Dina, Ashwati, and Vineet, hi, welcome to you guys. We are just getting started on our sessions. You should have control over your microphone. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions or anything like that, please feel free to pitch in. All right, let's get started. So, what am I going to talk about with Agile Performance Management? First off, and this is where I want to know your ideas and your outputs. What is performance management? Why do organizations do performance management? What do we mean by this? How would you define it? How would you describe it? Go ahead. Any thoughts, any ideas? Please feel free. Just unmute yourself and go for it. What do you understand by performance management? Go on, Ashwati, please get us started. And then we'll go to Sushma after you.
Okay, so what is performance management is basically when an employee joins the company, they are given a set of target or the goals just to measure their level of like commitment to that goal or the way they have achieved the task. So it evaluates is a form of an appraisal, which either for some team it's quarterly being done, for some it is half yearly, or for some people it's yearly that takes place. Is basically to understand like where are they standing from the goals that they have given up. If are they meeting the expectation, are they below the expectation? If they are below the expectation, what better trainings can be given to them just to improve their productivity or to perform well.
Absolutely. That is essentially what performance management is all about. Sushma, what were you going to add to this?
Yeah, Ashwati has already mentioned a lot of things. I would like to add smart goals to evaluate the performance of the employee and
Yeah.
look into it what the year ahead would be for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is where things begin to get a little bit interesting because organization to organizations, they do performance management for different reasons. Now, what you identified there, technically, if you're talking about performance management, what we are looking at or what we are hoping to get out of this is that one, people know what their objectives are, and that you're setting those very clear expectations out for them in terms of what their goals are, what they should be achieving, or perhaps what they should also be working towards. Not only that, we review and assess their work, and with that review and assessment, give an opportunity to allow feedback to be shared, constructive comments to be made, and give people a chance to understand how they can maximize their value to the organization. Now, sometimes or not sometimes, but most of the reasons you are focused on individual performance is because at the end of the day, when you are getting the best out of your individual employees, collectively, that begins to shape your organization's performance. So The individual performance reviews or performance appraisals often feed into your larger organization performance. And of course, every company wants to do well. So this is why performance management is done in most organizations. Now, what is the purpose of it? Now, this is where organization to organizations may vary sometimes. Ideally, the purpose of performance management and the best practice over here, you're thinking about how do I enhance an employee's or how do I optimize rather? What's the best way to put their skills and potential to use so that the organization benefits mostly from it? It's also an opportunity for you to give them some feedback to recognize and appreciate the work that they've put in and kind of measure how well they've been doing things against their targets. What this helps with is it helps with creating organizational efficiency and enhancing productivity. But what it also helps with is it gives people a chance to talk about those things which might be limiting or restricting their performance from being as best as it could be. So you have options or opportunities there to also begin to create more optimal work environments for this or an environment where people can truly flourish. So this is why we do performance management. Now, where it differs, and this is where controversies come in, this is why it becomes a painful process sometimes, is what is the real reason why organizations do performance management and how is it pegged in an organization? There are usually one of two approaches. Some organizations do performance management, which is entirely rewards driven. So you will look at somebody's performance, assess or rate it, and then based on their rating, there's a reward piece attached to it. So their commissions, their bonuses, allowances, any kind of performance related pay element, contingent element comes out of what their grading is. This kind of defeats the purpose of performance management because all it becomes is a reward conversation. And that is a very different thing to having a performance conversation, which is developmental driven, where you're genuinely working towards enhancing and improving people's performance. So, worthwhile thinking about for your organization, what is the performance management approach? Is it a rewards driven one? Is it a developmental driven one? It could be a combination. Is it a hybrid which includes both? So over to you all. Can you put in the chat one word which lets me know whether it is reward driven or whether it is developmental driven or whether it is both? Go ahead. Over to you guys. How is performance management done in your workplace, your current one or the one that you were previously working in? Brilliant. Vineet says both. Vineet, is it effective? Or rather, how effective is it? Please unmute and share. If you're in a position where you can talk or you can type in the chat. Go on, Vineet.
Uh, yeah, for us, it works to an extent because, but the challenge which we have seen in our organization is that we set the development plan, but the continuous monitoring becomes a challenge because we set the development plan. Our training need analysis is based on the inputs from the performance management cycle. However, when we uh, come up with trainings, but people often they attend the training, but the effectiveness or the downstream impact of the training is somewhere gets diluted. We don't track that. So
Yeah.
the approach is to have a mix of both. So
Yeah.
our downstream rewards is completely based on the inputs from performance management, and our
Yeah.
training calendar for the next year is based on performance management. But I
Yeah.
just want to understand: is there any better way to find the impact of the training which came as an input of performance management, as a development plan for the employee?
We'll have a chat about that. So hold forward to that question because it's a very good one. So if your performance management also links to your training development and also links to your talent management strategies, how do you measure its effectiveness? What's the clues? I'll come back to that question. But what you said early on, the challenges with this approach. So it's great that it's both, but like you say, sometimes you need to do it in a slightly more refined way because otherwise it becomes very tricky to monitor and ensure that what you are hoping your performance management system do is actually what it does. Thank you. Sushma, you've said both as well. Hidian, you said both as well. Tina says both, and it is effective. But how we measure it and how inclusive it is are both challenges, says Dina. And Maria says, for both my previous company, it is very difficult, and sometimes we do not meet the true purpose or our goals. So there are certain areas or issues over here. Let's start picking up some of these things and say, okay, how do we take this forward? What do we do with this? And it's worthwhile in order to get till that to understand what is the steps that go on in the performance management process. So pretty much you've already hinted at this, and I'm pretty sure, a lot of you already kind of follow this kind of a stuff. It all starts with, well, what are your goals? What is your job description? That's the first part. And out of those job descriptions, what is your responsibility, and how do you measure effectively using some smart techniques, what those things translate into in terms of actions that you've got to carry out or objectives you've got to achieve. It could also be outcomes that you're trying to achieve for the organization. So that job description leads to your objective setting and outcomes, and then that leads to performance conversations. Now, these performance conversations, I'm not keen on the word review, but better performance conversations or performance management conversations, because they could be a whole range of things aside from just being a review. It's not just an evaluation of somebody's techniques, it's way more than that. And then, like Vineet was saying, what do I need to do to get better? And so your training and development plan comes out of that. All of these pieces make up performance management. Not every organization includes all of this in their performance management, and not every organization will effectively do each of these four stages when they do performance management. So, first piece of Agile is making sure that every single stakeholder who's supposed to be there is involved in there. So, who all are involved in this particular process? If you look at it, when it comes to setting objectives, it is your leadership. And the role of the leadership is pretty much to set that organizational directions. Because once you've set those organizational directions, you can begin to translate it to, what does this mean at an individual level? What does it mean in terms of the standards you're expecting from people? And what does this mean in terms of how you are uplifting, helping, supporting your organizational employees to actually achieve those performance targets? So what we want to move away from, and this is where the agile word comes in, is those performance reviews which are a little bit stagnant. And what I mean by that is, say if your organization does the usual cycle is at the start of of your year, you set objectives, and then quarterly or biannually or once a year, you do a review of this. If it is so widely spaced out, where you're looking at 3 to 6 to even 9 to 12 months before you're actually talking about those performance objectives, it becomes a paper ticking exercise where you're saying, well, did we have a performance conversation? Yes. But it is very hard to say to somebody, last year, that work that you were doing, or your performance in the last 6 months has not been up to standard. If I was a manager, I'm going to be thinking, well, why did I tell them that 6 months ago so that we could have had better performance in the last 6 months? The other thing is, if you ever have to go into a performance conversation as a manager and tell somebody you are underperforming, or I'm going to give you a rating of do not meet expectations, the fault is not of the employee, the fault is of the manager. Why haven't they said this to the employee before? You should never be in a situation where you're reviewing or rating the performance that you have people that fall below the standards if you have taken correct measures along the way to bring this performance standards up to what your expectations are. So a large part of this is that communication, and this is where what more agile performance management looks like. It is no longer that static quarterly kind of process, but it's more ad hoc. It's more ongoing. It could be daily in some cases, it could be weekly in some cases, it could be as and when required. You don't have to have a specific time scale, as long as the employee and the person that has set their objectives or the conversation that you have over there about performance are ongoing. And these are discussions, so they're not as formalized as a tick box exercise. You could have a largely spaced out tick box exercise for data collection purposes or for reward conversations or something like that. But the ones which are truly about improvement, enhancement, and development should be an ongoing one, because this is the time at which you can, if somebody is doing something well, tell them straight away what they're doing well so they know that this is being appreciated by the organization. If somebody is doing something which you feel like is outstanding, thank them for it almost immediately. If you think that somebody should stop doing something, tell them that immediately. So, a part of this performance conversation can also be What are you doing as a result of it? Are you just giving them feedback on what they have done, or are you begin to shape the kind of behaviors you want to see in the future? So the agile piece here is don't talk just about the past, talk about the future as well. What do you want them to start doing? What do you want them to continue doing? What do you want them to stop doing so that their performance can be enhanced? And the more clearer you are with it, the better it gets into the agile piece. And so after you've done all of those, you can then actually more systematically bring in the reward side, and that could be annual, where you rate those performance. And this is what your formal session looks like. So, what is a new age performance management looking like? One, you have more shorter ad hoc reviews or conversations, and the more formalized ones are more the reward conversations. So, development ones are ongoing, the reward ones are perhaps more spaced out. So I'm going to pause over here and allow you to comment or ask questions or share anything that you're thinking about. Go ahead, over to you guys. I've got one comment from Hidyan, which says both worked. However, direct manager's involvement was a big challenge. Yes, this is another one. Hidyan, do you want to tell me a little bit more? So aside from it being tagged, if you don't have line managers who are supporting this, as much as we want to talk about the brand new, more agile piece, how do we do this? Go on, Hidyan. Um, what was your struggle with the managers?
Hi. There was lots of challenges. Honestly, it depends on the character of the manager as well. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. Some of
Yeah,
them, they are manager because they are so good in their technicality. However, when it comes to the big image of the
yeah,
department itself, the struggle will be real.
yeah,
Some of them are really emotional. Some of
yeah,
them are really scared of the end of the world. This will affect their end of life because
yeah,
this is someone's job. They don't see it as when you address something, you are addressing it to make it better, to work on it, to develop it. And
yeah,
so it is for the benefit of this person.
yeah,
And that was big time a challenge.
yeah.
So covering it up, it's not good.
Yeah,
It's
and
gonna feel them more.
relying on line managers without training the managers. So why are they reluctant? It could be they don't have time. It could be that the process is too complicated. It could be they don't know how to do it. So why is it a challenge is something else that we've got to look at, especially if you're working in HR. You can't just say, okay, here's a more agile approach to performance management and then not support it so that the managers are more comfortable learning about all of these. Nikhil, thank you. I'm glad you find it interesting. If you have any questions, please do let me know. So, briefly, that is what I wanted to show you over here in terms of one of the ways in which you can bring in agility. But there are other ways. So let's continue talking about this. How does this link in with this, what we call as a performance management change? So I'm going to go back to the question which Vineet had asked over here. You're looking at the past performance, you're looking at the objectives that have been set, you're kind of rating them, you're making a judgment on how well people are doing things, you're giving them feedback, both positive as well as developmental, and both past focused as well as future focused. But what you really want to shape is the performance in the future. And the sooner you do this, the quicker you do this, the more actively and constantly and regularly you do this, the better impact there is in terms of achieving that impact. So how does this work? Um, every organization plays this slightly differently, but you could have more systemic approaches in terms of having, a launch meeting at the start, creating dashboards where people can update themselves. But it is this piece around creating a regular feedback. That's the most important over here. The more regular your feedback sessions are, the more conversations you have with it, the better is your updates. And you can do that with your individual team members. You can also do that with entire teams together to review and progress or progress review these sorts of things along the way. So this is what agile performance management is, differing from the old day or old age school. The second way in which it differs is in your art of giving performance feedback. Give me one quick second. I just need to stop these blue circles from coming on my slide every single time. So just give me a quick second. While I am sorting that out, colleagues, have a quick think. Why is it that organizations sometimes Or why is it sometimes that organizations' employees tend to have underperformance? And how does your organization deal with this? So, what do you do when there is underperformance? What are the common reasons for underperformance? How are these tackled? You can put it in the chat or unmute and share. Over to you all. And I'll tell you how agility comes into this. Why is there underperformance? Go on, Dina.
Sometimes some employees do not achieve the goals that put it in the early years. So they do not meet the expectations for the management level. For that, they do not meet the expectation.
Yeah. In other words, if you've not defined it for them, it's not going to be clear what they are supposed to be achieving. Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
because this should be categorized by objective, specific point, and KPIs. So each point should be reached like percentage to pass the gate.
Yeah. And if you've not told them what those standards are, what it is that they've got to be achieving, then we've got an issue over there. Added to that, we've got a couple of other things that people have put in the chat, which is toxic culture, demotivated employees, lack of transparency, not having people clearly state what these objectives are or know what those objectives are, negativity and morale. And if people are not motivated, again, you're not going to achieve some of these standards. Lack of training, lack of observation, lack of feedback, lack of transparency. There are so many things that come up. Smita's added another one saying when the merit pays are not driven from performance evaluation. In other words, favoritism, bias. Where are you? You're commenting on people's personality rather than actually what they are doing. And then it addresses lack of recognition or feedback on past year's performance. So all of these add up, but generally, there are four main things, that stick out. So all of these things can fall under four major categories. First one is they do not know what you want them to achieve. This is where, if the performance targets are not clear, or the KPIs are not clearly laid out, the expectations are not clearly laid out, it is clearly an issue. And so, why is that an issue? If you can figure out, is it a communications problem? Is it a lack of clarity? Is it that people don't know what these expectations are? What is the real issue? Once you can figure that out, you can tackle that. If people just don't know what their targets are, setting them those targets and clarifying those targets and explaining those can sort that problem out very quickly. However, if the problem is what they don't know what the targets are, but they don't have the competency for it, then you're giving the wrong solution for the wrong problem. So the second is, they may know what they need to achieve, but they lack the competence. So they may not have the skills, which is where lack of training comes into place, and goes back to what a couple of you were saying before. Hidyan and Vineet both pointed this out. So if learning is a problem, offer them that training, offer them the development. It could also be that the competence is there, but the commitment is not there. They may not be willing to change their behaviors. They may not be interested. They may not see the benefit of it, in which case a different strategy needs to be used. So sometimes it may be wrong person has been given a wrong project. It's not at all aligned with their skill set, or it's not at all aligned with their interests. It's not at all aligned with their aspiration. And that could be easily sorted out by reallocating the task to somebody who's the most appropriate for it. So again, underperformance, you really need to dig deeper. And this is what Agile means. Agile means for every single time that you see something is not working, interrogate it, investigate it, get right to the heart of why is this performance an issue, without making assumptions, without bringing in bias, without bringing in punishment, without bringing in any kind of negative feeling associated with that. So sometimes the more tougher ones to notice are they know what you want them to achieve. They have a very clear idea of what their skills and competence is. However, they don't have the tools or the resources, or there are factors which are outside of their control. So, I may have the skills, I know what I need to do, but I don't have a technique. I don't have a tool. I don't have a budget. I don't have a resource. I don't have control. It isn't lying in somebody else's hands. So, in this kind of an issue, as a manager, if you are doing performance management, you cannot set new objectives or you cannot go and put them on training. It's not going to solve the problem. What is more appropriate over here is to find out why. What is the problem? And then come up with a solution in terms of how can you give a bit more control to your employees so that they are better prepared to achieve those. And then lastly, if it is something related to their personal lives or, factors that are impacting their engagement, more to do with morale and the soft skills piece, perhaps the support, the welfare, being a sensitive and empathetic leader can go a long way. In some cases, you might even give counseling as an option in terms of how people are dealing with this. But what is the agile piece is thinking about why are you giving the feedback. Now, most organizations, as a part of performance review, says give feedback. Well, what are you trying to do with this feedback? And this is where you may have a different purpose. You may have a business purpose, so you're using your feedback to give people a chance to understand how their work impacts on the organization or on the stakeholders of the organization, and therefore why it is imperative that they change their performance. Sometimes it's a personal growth one. So the feedback is about giving people a chance to improve their behaviors, improve their performance, or sometimes you're giving feedback just so that you can clarify the communications and set specific standards for your work. So how you just give your feedback depends on what is the purpose of that feedback. All these three are essential when it comes to the overall performance management piece. But do you include all of these elements? Are all of these purposes clarified, or do you focus on one or the other? So think about the feedback that is given in your organization as a part of the performance review. And again, in the chat or unmute and share and tell me, what do you think is the purpose of the feedback that you get from your managers? What do they give you that feedback for? Maria says combination of all. I know you don't have a microphone working at the moment, Maria. Brilliant. How about the rest of you? What does your feedback look like? So Shrikala says for them, it's all about improving the quality of work. Brilliant. Sorry, Dina, go ahead. And I'll come to you, Ashwati, after that.
It's like performing a review for the feedback will be.
So it's about the performance. Have you
Yes.
done? Yeah, and then shaping that. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Ashwati, in your case?
Again, like to understand where the challenges is so that I can perform better or whether I can find a better alternatives to do that, feedback,
Yeah.
suggestions and all.
Do you connect that to the overall improvements in the organization or just limited to the person's job?
Overall.
Overall. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. This is what we want you to do, right? Stretch it a little bit further. Now, here is another approach in terms of what you do with your feedback. So how are people meeting their targets and goals? Absolutely helps them shape that. But also evaluating and how they might how might they be supported. The way you do this can really depend. And this is where there is a difference between old school feedback and new age feedback. Old school feedback used to be very directive. In other words, it used to be led very much by the manager. So what happens is, let's say A is the manager and B is the employee. So A has a problem with B's performance, as in the manager has an issue with the way the employee is performing. In this case, the directive kind of feedback is where the manager says, look, I've seen this problem. Here is evidence that supports why this is a problem. They kind of quantify it, and then you give directives to your employees in terms of how they should change. And while this works, it's a little bit old school. So the newer approach to performance management is to go away from these conversations which are directive to go into what's called as coaching feedback. Coaching feedback is a two-way conversation. So if you look at the arrows, it's a two-way thing. So here as well, a manager figures out, there's a problem, there's an issue, you quantify it, you find the facts and relevant figures for it. But then you talk with the other person to understand why is it a problem. And the more you have those conversations, the more you're able to, chat with somebody to say, okay, what's happening over here. Sushma, I'll come to your question in a second. Is it coaching or mentoring? And I'll tell you where the difference is in a second. So here, You work with the other person to say, okay, we know this is a performance standard. This is where I want you to be. This is where you are. Tell me, first of all, why are you at this level? What can we do to bring you up to this? And the responsibility for getting from here to there lies not with the manager, but in that joint conversation where employee is saying, here is what I can do to enhance my contributions. And when the employee agrees on those solutions, and when they are responsible for finding the solution to that particular performance issue, the buy-in from them is a lot better. But not a lot of managers are comfortable doing this because it might seem like, oh, losing control. You're not losing control. You're actually becoming way more empathetic and giving an opportunity for our employees to come up with the solutions to their problem. Most people go to work not with the intention saying, I'm going to do the worst job possible. Most people actually want to do a good job. And sometimes you have to really listen empathetically to figure out why are they not performing as well and how would they solve it? What would help them with it? And so the more open-ended you keep these questions, the better it is. Now, going back to Sushma's point, is this coaching or mentoring? This is where you need to understand what is the difference between coaching and what is the difference between mentoring. So coaching is this open, collaborative, discussive approach. Mentoring is sometimes the employee might say, I don't know. I don't know. Can you give me a suggestion? Can you give me an idea? And based on your experience, based on your subject matter expertise, you give a recommended solution. So mentoring comes in where you're not being directive, but if somebody asks for your option or solution, you become a little bit more um, focused in terms of what you think they could potentially do. You're not forcing it. Directive means you're forcing it. Mentoring is somewhere in the middle saying, look, this is my observation. This is what I would have done. Here's what I recommend you can try. But you're again giving the employee a choice to say, how might I do it? So in between the directive and the coaching comes this mentoring type of feedback where you are guiding them without being too forceful or too assertive. Directive is very, very driven, very, very forceful. And coaching is absolutely the least one because here you're asking them to come up with their own solutions. So this is the difference, Sushma, between coaching and mentoring. Did you want to know anything else about that? Any further questions there? So new age managers, they go along this line, the coach of peace. Now, over to you all. Think about the feedback that you have received. Where does it tend to be? Is it more directive? Is it more mentoring like? Or is it more coachive? How is performance management in your organization? And again, the same question I asked before. Does it work? Is it effective? Go on, Dina.
Because I have several managers of the employees, so I find that we have like some people coaching and some people directive. Even they have, it's like the style for managers affected the feedback and the assessment. Very high percentage actually.
And how does it work? Which one do you like better? Which one do you respond to better?
Actually, the coaching is better because we are, as a human factor, we should like make the human take this lead to do the work, has experience on it. While directive, it's like put blind people in the way and should follow the sound already. And that's
Yes.
very attractive, very
Yeah.
non-creative way to work.
Absolutely. This is why there's a school of thought that says, you know what, be more agile, be more flexible, be more open to different sorts of ways in which this can be done. Lovely. Thank you. Mary Lou, welcome. And Nikhil, welcome back. Smita, over to you. In terms of your experience, how is performance management done in your organization? And what do you think about this coaching approach?
Okay, so not in my current organization. I think my current organization has way long to go. But in
Mm,
previous organization, we were very much fortunate to have a very established and a fully fledged performance management system. So it started
mm-hmm,
right from the vision and mission of the
mm,
company. Okay, so
yeah.
from there, the corporate KPIs were been defined, and then it was been cascaded down on the departmental level, team levels, and all. Okay, and at the same time it was like made sure that everybody is like everybody's objectives are aligned to the
Mm,
corporate level. It like
mm,
cascades down and then it rolls up. Okay, rolling
Mm,
up here we are also referring to, like, the achievement, because of course, like, the target of the corporate, they won't be achieving on their own. So it will be
mm,
whatever the contributions from each of the employees, it will be contributed together on the corporate level. It was that way. And we
mm.
also had quarterly reviews. So quarterly reviews was always a very good yes, quarterly reviews was always a very good uh, period where the feedbacks was been exchanged, so that, like, anytime if the employee, yeah, is deviating or like has no idea or clarity about the achievement of the target. Just an example, like, maybe the employee is really working hard, okay,
Mm,
but he has no idea that if he is on the right path. So the
mm,
periodic review was actually, like, bringing the employee back on the track, giving a
mm.
valid feedback. So I think that here, direct, I think directive or the mentoring played a bigger role than coaching. That's what I understand in my previous organization, because coaching, like, it becomes a little bigger scope. Like, a team leader can coach, like, he can tell, okay, this is our objective and then you have to do this, 1 2 3. But when
Mm,
you talk about mentoring, it comes like in person,
mm.
you give feedbacks in person, so it was very much effective that way. And
Okay.
then it was, yes, it was
Yeah.
like ours was like, the our reward program was ultimate outcome of your whole year's performance. So
Yeah.
the
And so this
rewards
is what
were
I'm going
not,
to get into.
yes.
Exactly. This is what I'm going to get into because the performance conversations become periodic, the reward ones become more annual, and they
Correct.
kind of summarize everything that has gone on in the individual performance conversations. Lovely.
Mm.
Thank you, Smita. Thank you. So, Shrikala said, yes, go ahead, Vineet.
Hey, I have a question now. I understand the two-way feedback could work for employees, say, till a supervisory level. But
Mm.
what's your opinion about, say, from a management or say above supervisory level, say, from example, an assistant manager and above? Don't you think that, it better way of, giving feedback would be a two-way plus getting feedback from the subordinates and peers because they kind of work with multiple stakeholders. So now if I'm an individual contributor, I understand my manager can give me feedback because I'm not working with anyone else. But since you're talking about this agile performance management, uh, it would be more constructive to have feedback at least say half yearly or once in a year from your peers and subordinates as well. So from your
Yeah.
experience, what do you think is the right way for someone who is managing a team or who is working with multiple stakeholders? Probably it could be internal or external stakeholders.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about that?
So this was a third part. The first part that I was talking about earlier was the focus. The second one is in terms of how you give feedback. The third piece on the performance management is who gives the performance feedback. And this is where old school is it's between the manager and the employee. And it works in most cases. The newer approach is what we call 360-degree appraisals. So 360-degree appraisals, which a lot of companies and organizations are using, is this idea and mentality that your performance cannot be judged by a single person because that's not the single stakeholder you're serving as a part of your role. And there's a more holistic feedback about your performance uh, if you're approaching loads of different parties. And so, customers, peers, subordinates, supervisors, external departments, internal stakeholders, any of those people should also become a part of your performance loop. And that's why it's called 360-degree feedback. And a lot of organizations try that. What they try to do is so just the way we have like this kind of a manager to a employee feedback, there is nothing that stops you from giving peer-to-peer feedback or encouraging as a manager for you to encourage peer-to-peer feedback amongst your team members. It actually works really well. Helping people understand what each other's strengths are, helping people understand what their areas of improvement are, just by colleagues giving feedback to each other can go a long way. But you're absolutely right, Vineet. And this is where there's a difference between two-way or if you do go for the 360 degree as well. With a 360 degree, the challenge though is can you afford the time and the energy and the effort that it takes to actually cover and get feedback from all of these different stakeholders? Second challenge is, do you consistently get that for every single employee, or do you tend to get it for selected employees? So where organizations take this is they say, you know what, 360-degree feedback is great, but we'll do peer-to-peer feedback informally. We will do random spot checks in terms of customer or client satisfaction feedbacks on individual people's performance. But then it is mostly for the senior layers or your critical positions or your identified high potential employees or your talent that you might do a whole 360-degree feedback in a more formalized and structured way. Does it add value? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Should you do it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, go on.
No, we have seen value, but you are right that the time that we have to invest on getting this feedbacks was more. So we have restricted to only say like senior management and the management category. But the challenge was that how many questions we restrict to get the feedback. Some
Yeah,
people they are biased, so we really want to move forward with this kind of approach. So
yeah,
let's see. I think your point is right. It's better. It's always better to have a holistic view in terms of performance when it comes
yeah.
to the management cadre and above.
But you see, this
Uh,
is what you just said. There is a part of the old school versus new school thinking. If you are sending a
mm,
survey out to get feedback, that's not a conversation. It doesn't
yeah.
allow, and it's very one-sided. You're almost relying on the stakeholder to actually take the time to give feedback. And then you're saying, okay, we want you to give feedback, but in very limited way on a very selected questions. So why would I do it? If I had to give a feedback on my peer and I know it's not adding any value to the peer, or if I know the questions are going to be something random, or if I'm doing it just to please my manager, the feedback quality is not that great. So you have to be very clear, like I said, very clear on what is the purpose. Why do you want the peer feedback? Why do you want the customer feedback? Why do you want the internal stakeholders feedback? Yes, it is better, but is your purpose clear? So we go back into what's the purpose of your feedback?
Mm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So many questions, right? It's not an easy one to solve. But definitely for your senior team members or your critical roles, you should try and get that more comprehensive feedback. But again, just asking questions in a survey probably is not the best way because you can bring in coaching elements in that as well. Do a focus group.
Yeah, I will try that approach this year probably. Yeah, thank you.
That this is my job. As a part of these master classes, we are just sparking thoughts. You've got to work with the reality of what could work and whether it would work and how can you shape it so it works. Brilliant. I was just saying before, when I asked this question for Shrikala. Shrikala, you use the coaching approach. How does it work in your organizations?
As a team leader, I prefer the coaching because
Mm-hmm.
then I can understand personally what the problems they are facing, especially when it comes for us to meet the customers also directly.
Mm-hmm. And
So
is it this is your preference or this is the practice?
this is my preference, and that was the practice as well,
And
which
did
I
the
quite
practice
enjoyed.
work? Yeah, brilliant. You
Yes, it
enjoyed it.
did. Yes, I
Good.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, so going back to is this effective or not, how did you measure that? So you enjoyed it. The other party probably enjoyed it. How did you measure its effectiveness?
I have seen the quality of the work, the improvement
Mhm.
in their work, and
Yeah,
moreover, their trust that yes, I have been trained well and I am being guided well. So
yeah.
I found it very, very, very satisfying.
Yeah. So Vineet, the answer to your first question, how do you see value of your training development plans or the conversation outcomes that come out of this is exactly what Shrikala said. You see it back in your performance. Has it improved the performance? So even with your training, you can be very superficial and say, okay, did they enjoy the training? Did they like the food? Did they like the trainer? Did it meet the outcome? Do those very basic kind of questions or get into more depth and say, are you seeing the transfer of this learning from the training into the workplace and has that improved people's performance?
Yeah, we kind of pre and post training improvement we have seen. So we have seen, say, over the next 3 or 6 months, they kind of reflect what they have learned from the training program on to their work. But
Yeah.
how do they continue it? What you've seen is that for the first 3 months, there's a transformation from what they used to, the way they used to work before they start the training, and then there's a transformation. It continues over 6 months, but then it kind of declines it. So
Yeah.
that's the
But
challenge
so
that we are
this
facing.
this is the
We have
thing.
been. Yeah.
Yeah. The more agile approach would say the moment that the manager sees that it's going back into the older ways, you would catch it then and there and have a conversation to say, I've noticed that you're not applying the learning from your training and it's slipping back into the old ways. How has this happened? Why is this happening? Can we change it back? What needs to happen to change it back?
I would
I
suggest that
think
you can have one-on-one with those people because
Mm,
I feel like whatever I have taught them, they are still continuing it even after I have left.
mm. Sorry, Vinay, were you going to add something there?
Yeah, so the approach that we have kind of done is now that, we have kind of like stay interviews that we do with employees, we kind of have started doing learning interviews. So to see, okay, what support they would require to continue with their performance. So that has kind of shifted the performance expectation. So we are seeing changes, but I think it would be a gradual change. It might take some time for everyone to come under the same thing. It also depends on the number of HR employees, right? So we need to
Yeah,
have strength to measure, continuously keep monitoring and measuring. So we keep
yeah.
focus on high potential employees, but doing it for say 400 plus, 500 plus employees becomes a challenge. But
It
I think
does,
we are, yeah.
unless you devolve it. The only way to do it for larger numbers is devolve it to the line managers.
Mhm, yeah. You see, the
And
challenge for the line managers is it's also about the tenure. So we have people who have been with the company for say 8 plus years, 10 plus years. So they kind of do it as a routine because someone from HR is pushing them.
mm,
It becomes that they're saying that okay, at the end of the day, what we are going to get is this percentage of increment, or this is what we are going to get. And one more challenge which we could see in our organization was the space in the career ladder. So they know there's no much of space left for our
mm,
progress. So we
mm,
continue doing what we are doing and we'll get what at the end of the day we know what we're going to get. So that meets our expectations. So that's it. So that's
yeah,
also been a challenge. So most of our
yeah,
organizations, the average tenure is 10 plus years. So they have
yeah,
been with the organization for a long time. So that's additional challenge that we are facing. We
yeah.
are trying to see what best we can do to, keep that momentum going.
Yeah. And this is it. This is why this is my kind of concluding slide on this. It's an art. There's no one easy answer. But again, when you are giving feedback, it should enable performance, not disable performance. And if you're finding that after people being there for 10 years or, after, doing something new and different, improving performance, they slip back into the old, what you have done essentially is you've disabled that performance. And again, it's worth thinking about, well, what can I do to make sure that this feedback is working, that the performance conversations are actually live, alive, something that people genuinely listen to, acknowledge, own, and then take forward with. Um, so again, that's the whole agile mindset. So to sum up with, and the last piece is, let's connect this to that original point in saying, well, as much as performance are about improvements and enhancements and development and growth, the reality is at some point in time it begins to get also connected with performance and rewards, so or performance related rewards, and this is where sorry, it might be worth thinking about, okay, how are rewards changing and what do we mean by agile rewards? So again, questions for you colleagues: what do we mean by rewards? Let's begin with that. For those of you that are in the CIPD level 5 sessions, you should know the answer to this. We've been talking about it for quite a while. What are rewards? But rest of you as well, how would you look at rewards and what is the connection in your organization um, with some of these rewards or trends in rewards? What are rewards? A simple question.
The sum of salary plus all the monetary and non-monetary benefits.
Yeah. So it's the financial and the non-financial which an employee gets in exchange for their contribution to the organization. So what are the new trends we are seeing in rewards? Colleagues, what have you seen that's different in rewards now than ever before?
I think what we have seen, like previously, it was all about salary, annual total cash, which was salary plus bonus. But now the companies are thinking more personalized rewards based on employee requirements,
Yeah,
like, providing additional annual day leaves,
yeah,
um, more leaves for maternity benefits, going more in above the what the law regulatory requirements are. Yeah,
yeah,
providing wellness has been like kind of buzzword nowadays. So a lot
yeah,
of focus on wellness, both mental wellness, physical wellness, providing
yeah,
membership benefits to the club, gyms,
yeah,
health clubs. So
yeah,
yeah, it's kind of very personalized to the company,
yeah,
where based on what we get to hear from the employees as a feedback, that's what rewards have kind of changed now. The
yeah,
entire scope of rewards, which has always been existing, has been changed now a lot. I think it's
yeah.
more evident from the survey results that come out as well, especially in the Middle East region.
Yeah, exactly. So all of these you know about. There is one which is still not that famous in the Middle East region, which actually ties in all of these. So personalized rewards, experiential rewards, wellness focused rewards. The thing is, what is happening in our workforce right now is that we have multi-generational workforces, as in lots of diversity, not just of ethnicities, but of ages, educational backgrounds, aspirations, real life expectations. All of those things are very different than what it used to be. So a lot of organizations have gone into this concept of what we call as flexible rewards. Now, flexible rewards is this idea that it's kind of like you go to a cafeteria or a restaurant and you get a menu, right? Say my budget is 100 dirhams and I get a menu of different rewards that are available. I choose the rewards that are most relevant for me within my 100 dirhams budget. So, for example, at the moment, for me, I've got two children. I'm in a certain phase of life where what matters for me is my travel. What matters for me is better experiences for the children. What matters for me is education allowance or something like that. So, the rewards that I value are something around education allowances, something around options for traveling, work-life balance. Those sorts of things matter to me a lot. So I can pick the rewards from that menu that are relevant to me. Compare that to somebody else who is probably in their 60s or coming close to retirement age. For them, what they would value more perhaps is more health related benefits, more end of service related benefits, because they're going into that sort of a phase in their life where if they had a choice of a menu, they would probably choose the ones which are closer to their expectations and experiences. Compare that to somebody who's an 18 or a 20-year-old just joining the workforce where they are starting out and the whole thing is I want to apply my learning or I want to make a lot of money. Different things are going to motivate them. If you have people in their 20s or late 20s, they're beginning to put down mortgages for their houses, they're beginning to have more opportunities to travel, they're getting financially more independent, they're perhaps focused on health and fitness quite a bit as well. So depending on which age group people are, what ethnicity they come from, what educational background they're pursuing, people may want different rewards. So the new trend is to give kind of like a menu of rewards, which we call as flexible rewards, and have a dedicated allowance for each person, and then give people a choice. Make it personalized to let them choose which rewards are going to be most appropriate for them, which also work for the organization in terms of their commitments, in terms of their priorities, in terms of their pocket size. So that's another trend. What do you think about flexible rewards? Would it work in your organization? Would it not work? Which side do you fall on? Go on, Dina.
Yes, the company actually, my company actually prepared something for the winners last year's, like package for travel, and choose one of the partner. You can choose anyone, his family or friends, to travel.
Yeah.
So he can select destinations, the hotel, and everything, and the company pay limited value for the
Yeah.
travel.
Yeah, but they could only go on a travel, right? So let's say, for example, you're
Yes,
saying we're going to allocate 5,000 towards your travel.
yes,
Well, you choose who you want to travel with, where you want to travel, how long you
yes.
want to go for.
And
But
we will pay
you
it.
have to
That's
travel.
it. Yes,
Could
but
you say, could they?
he or she should travel. Yes.
Yeah, but what if they wanted to spend the 5,000 not on travel, but on updating the furniture in their house? Would you give them the
Actually,
5,000?
no. Actually, no.
See, this is what
Yes,
we mean by flexible rewards, right?
yes.
You think it's a great idea to give somebody a travel option, but what if for them the biggest deal is, well, I need to change the bed or I need to say, change the cooking range or, washing machine. And for me, getting that 5,000 in cash to spend how I want it might be more relevant. As a company, you are still spending the same amount. You're still spending 5,000. However, you have more control over it. Whereas why not just give it to your employee and let them choose what they want to spend it towards? This is what flexible rewards as a concept begins to shift. It's very agile, it's very personalized, um, but you are meeting the needs, the unique needs, the diverse needs of different people in the organization.
Actually, I have one comment regarding that.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the cash, because we don't have like this type of taxes inside Iraq. But my colleague said that any fees come to the employees, even as a reward, you should pay tax regarding that, the whole
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah.
So sometimes I find my HR's colleagues in other country do not prefer to give the employees cash because that will be under taxes.
Yeah. To be honest, and again, country to country, this differs, but usually any kind of a benefit should be a part of the overall allowance. So it is generally taxable, but we'll have a chat about it. Yes, Vineet, go ahead.
I have a question now. When you speak about providing a bucket of benefits where the employees can pick and choose, so the challenge won't that there be a challenge that the employee used that benefit, like you said, right? I have 5,000 dirhams, which I would like to use for furniture, but then I use that and I leave the company. So isn't it like a gray area where,
So
because
that's with
like
any reward.
whatever the existing benefits are, like for example airfare, there is a certain period after completion of which you get that amount, or you get the ticket. Like
Yeah.
wellness, okay, it's a generic one, we give it. But when you
Yeah.
provide that bucket of benefit,
Yeah.
they might pick and choose. So
This is where we have
recovery
to challenge that
amount of,
thinking.
yeah.
Yeah, I know where you're
So
coming from, but this is what any reward technically would mean that they could take and leave it. If I've given somebody, so first of all, annual leave ticket, by the way, again, a point of conversation. If you are doing something which the law requires to do, it's not a reward. So if you're giving somebody an annual leave ticket, once every uh, 2 years or once every year, the law requires you to do that. Now, if you're enhancing that and saying, okay, we're going to give you the ticket for not only you, but also your family and your dog and your maid, and you're enhancing that, then that becomes a reward. If you're doing what the law requires you to do, that's not a reward, first of
So,
all.
for example, in our company, we have provided that for the family, like you said, right? But
Yeah.
there is a certain period to it. So, you can, book tickets for a year, and after the completion of the calendar cycle, you can
Mhm.
provide your invoices and get it reimbursed. So,
That's fine.
it's not that we are not paying them upfront, but like when you provide a bucket of rewards, like say, for example, educational allowance, or for furniture, or you can go for a course like with Kaplan. I want to do CIPD, so I can get 5,000 from my company. I took the 5,000. After six
Yeah.
months, I leave. Now,
Yeah.
recovery, that probably would not be a feasible option because probably my gratuity amount would not be that much, or the end of
Yeah.
service amount that won't be. So that's the challenge, right? Now, if we go with this approach, what's
Yeah.
your take on uh, covering up with such challenges? What do you think would be the right approach
So
when we provide this kind of bucket of benefits?
you have to think of it the other way around. You said something like, okay, we give gym membership to everyone. It's a small reward, doesn't matter. It's probably, but you're giving that to anyone, right? Whether somebody stays or they leave, you're still giving them the gym membership. The idea over here is if you're spending an amount on the reward anyway, should the company decide what it's spent on, or should the employee decide what it's spent on? That, I guess, is the question, the fundamental question over there. How you protect yourself as an organization would be for any reward, anything at all that you give. You might say, okay, I've got an employee of the month voucher, and it's a 250 dirhams shopping voucher to which I give to the employee of the month. you are going to spend that 250 on any employee. Now, whether that employee gets that and then they leave the company or not, you are still going to spend that 250 on that employee of the month. The question is, should you be the one to say, okay, your 250 dirhams voucher is for Majidal Fatim, or it's for Carrefour, or it's for Walk Cinemas? Are you the one choosing, or are you just saying to the employee, here's your 250 dirhams, we appreciate you, I'm going to spend this money on appreciating you, you choose how you want to spend it? That's the question. The money is already there. The money is already going to be allocated towards that reward. So, as an organization, that's your mindset that I'm anyway going to be paying this. Now, who gets it, how long they get it, what they achieve it, how they spend it, that's the where the debate comes in. Does that help, Vineet? Now, you might say we'll only give you an employee of your month award if you stay for 3 months. So, we'll give it to you 3 months after you become the employee of the month.
That's the performance based right now. That's completely
Mhm.
on the performance bit. But when we come up with the benefits of like bucket of benefits, we have to extend it to all the employees.
Yeah.
Uh,
So,
that's
can
say
you
for
give me an
example,
example of something that you give all your employees?
so
Give me an
we give
example of a reward which is open for all your employees.
say we give vouchers during Ramadan, but that voucher we make it flexible. So we use the company where they have got multiple vendors enrolled with them. So
Yeah,
looking at our employee base, we know
yeah,
those employees frequently visit, say, a grocery shop, right? So everyone
yeah,
uses it. So rather than
yeah,
giving them, say, you take a Majid Al Futam or you take a Lulu voucher, we give them a voucher which from a company where they have multiple vendors enrolled with them and they can use it anywhere. It's not
yeah.
restricted only to, it
So
could be mobile recharge
can
as well.
any employee get this, or do you have to
Yeah, so
qualify for a certain?
we give it to all the employees.
And how much do you spend per employee on something like this?
So it depends. So like say last year we had on 250. So the
So
amount for an employee is minimal, but honestly speaking,
yeah,
the bucket of
so
reward is something which we are working on. But we are
yeah,
also looking how can we protect the interest of the organization as well. Now, when
yeah,
from our
but
thought process, we wanted
mm,
to provide a larger pool rather than giving a benefit bucket with only 250 dirham per employee. We wanted to
mm,
extend it so that that makes a real value addition rather than providing 250, which they will
mm,
use it. They can't use it really anywhere. So, like as you
mm,
said, right, education allowance for kids, or furnitures, or even for a course, the certification if they want to take something, or they want to
yeah,
travel. So we want to extend that pool and make it a bigger amount so that employees can really make use of it.
yeah,
So, but
yeah.
protecting the interest of the organization was challenge, something which is we're working on. So I just wanted to hear from you if you have come across any
So
sort of
yeah, so
challenges.
I'll tell you an example of it's a university I used to work in UK, how they did it. So just like this, you say you had a 250 amount in mind. It could be any amount, but let's say you had 250 amount in mind. Now that 250 amount in financial terms would mean 250 cash, which they can use towards a voucher, they can use for whatever they want. However, it could also be 250 in kind. So 250 dirhams might mean for for somebody like an office boy, um, 2.5 hours of work. So rather than saying, we are going to give you 250, would you instead like to take 2.5 hours off your work? Or, for a senior manager, that might be 1 days, whatever. It might be 1 days of work, 2 days of work. It could be going early on a couple of days. Depends. The idea is, as an organization, if you're willing to let go of your 250, any which way you're going to let go of that 250 per employee. So your budget says, I've got 10 employees and I'm going to give 250 to each one on a bucket of rewards. Let them spend it. I have 2,500. I distribute it to others and let them see what they want to spend it with. That's the whole idea over here. Or we can say, look, 2,500 means we can afford not to have people coming into work once a month and give it to them as a holiday. Or it means we give them flexible entry or exit. You can start anywhere between 8 and 11 on a specific day, and you finish between 6 and 4 any time, 4 and 6 any day. So it could mean different things depending on how you are calculating that. But from your organization's perspective, it is like how, if you have already allocated a budget amount, that's it. That's what flexible rewards says. You've got this budget allocated towards rewards. Do you want to control it, or can you be a little bit more open to the idea that perhaps employees can choose what they do with that amount? Why restrict them to those vouchers? Why not give it to them to use it for whatever they want it for? as long as you're still protecting your organization's interests. And the organization's interest is your people will be more motivated, engaged, value it, and therefore be more committed, be more loyal. Any reward would get you that.
Yeah, so yeah, that's true. So that's why we started from a small amount, but we wanted to make it like kind of which make an impact on the organization. So like for employees, at least it will make a difference.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think we have to look into different angles, like especially when it comes
yeah,
to
yeah,
from an HR professional point of view. Well, my first view would be how we can protect the interest of the company, right? And
yeah,
we wanted to give a substantial amount which employees can use for anything which will make a difference. So that's
yeah,
my
exactly.
idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
As
think
an
yeah,
HR professional, sorry, just to add over there, as an HR professional, if you're thinking about flexible rewards, the real question to ask is, well, if you are going to give that menu, do you have a system that allows people to choose and pick? Do you have a payroll or a finance system that would allow you to allocate it? Because that administrative piece can become very big, can become a huge challenge, especially if you're like a huge organization and everybody's choosing a different menu item to monitor,
Mhm.
make sure that is a bigger challenge than saying, okay, what are we going to spend this on?
Yeah, how much they have used on the pool that they have. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's one part of it, which we have to look into. But the protecting the interest of the company, that the employees don't kind of end up misusing it.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's definitely now bucket. Have to have a bucket of benefits so that
Yeah,
employees get the flexibility to choose rather than getting something imposed by the company.
exactly. So, colleagues, this kind of draws to a close what I wanted to share with you in terms of agile performance management as well as agile rewards. Over to you all. The last 20 minutes is for us to ask questions, share comments, share your thoughts. Over to you all. What other questions are playing in your mind? What other comments are coming in your mind? What would you like to ask me? Nothing at all. So, just to give you a bit of background, one of the reasons why we do these kind of master classes is it gives a brilliant opportunity for us to start hearing what other organizations are doing. And so, the people that are thinking about doing the CIPD program, or those of you that are in the HR field looking to enhance your knowledge, and if you're not already doing it formally as a part of a qualification, it allows you to start saying, well, where can I find out real life best practice, thought provoking ideas, new concepts in the things that I'm already doing in my work to have a better impact on my key stakeholders, have a better impact on my organization. So I would strongly encourage all of you to participate in these kind of events, networking events, webinars, master classes, enhance your knowledge. They give you a little bit of an idea to step out of your routine, reflect, think about how things are going, and at the same time, it also gives you an opportunity to meet with other colleagues and sort of see how else other organizations are playing with it. If you don't have any further questions or comments, thank you so much for attending. For those of you that are my CIPD Level 5 students, thank you for giving up your one more evening on CIPD. I'll see you all tomorrow for those of you that are still on the program, and for the rest of you, have an absolutely fabulous evening. Dina, go ahead. Did you have a question, comment? Go
No, no,
on.
thank you. Actually, it is a very attractive meeting. Thank you very much to join us this meeting. Have a
You
lovely
are
day.
most welcome. You too. Take care. Bye-bye. You're most welcome, Sushma. You're most welcome,
Thank you, Miss
Maria.
Fire.
You're most welcome, Ashwati. Have a fabulous Thursday. See you
You
tomorrow.
too. Bye
Thank you,
bye. See you
Payal.
tomorrow.
Bye. See you. Shrikala, lovely meeting you.
Lovely
Nikhil, have
meeting
a
you,
lovely
Payal. Thank you.
evening.
It has been very nice.
All wishing you all the very best. Same for you, Sushma. Same for you, Hidyan, Vineet. Brilliant meeting you all. Wishing
Thank
you
you,
all the
Payal.
best in your careers. You're most welcome, Sweta. Have a lovely evening. Take care.